Welcome, everybody, to Ghostlight. Each week, I sit down with awesome, creative people who I have met in my career, and we discuss the business of being an artist and how to survive and thrive in the performing arts in the modern era. And I'm joined today by a great friend and artist who I've had the pleasure to work with, Miss Ginna Hoben. Welcome.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Ginna, for anyone listening to the podcast who may not be familiar with your work, how do you describe yourself professionally these days?
Actor, writer, educator. That's usually the three that I lead with, but it's true that I am becoming a director. And so soon enough, it's going to become part of that hyphenate. I just haven't committed to it yet.
Do you, in your own mind, when you think about yourself as an artist, is there one of those titles that you latch on to most intensely?
Logically, like in my mind, I'm an actor. And that's partly because that's where I have dedicated so many hours and so much education. I spend so much time learning about acting. But I think maybe in my heart, gosh, I think this is the first time I've ever said this out loud, but I think in my heart, I'm a writer. I think if you were asking my heart, the answer is you're a writer. But there's like an argument between the head and the heart because once you've dedicated that much time to anything, you don't want to abandon it. I don't want to admit that acting isn't number one. Um, but I think it's likely that acting might fade away in my life. I don't think writing ever will.
Hmm. So let me flip the script on you and just say, from a financial perspective, just off the top of your head, rough percentages. I mean, for your career, what percentage of your income is coming from which of those titles?
Horrible with numbers. I cannot retain them very well. But let me say this. Let's say since, around the time that I started at the American Shakespeare Center, a little bit before you and I met, that was the first time that I started to steadily make money as an actor. And that was in 2007. I hadn't made a penny as a writer, so up and when probably when you said, how do you define yourself? I should have included fitness instructor, although I don't think of that as part of my creative identity. But that was how I was making my money for a long time. I still bring in income by teaching fitness classes. Um, so then it wasn't until probably 2010. I mean, I remember making like $25 for a 10-minute play that I wrote in the 90s, but it wasn't until 2010 that writing started to bring in any kind of, you know, s- noticeable income. But once it did, the amount of money that I made on one single play was probably more than all the theater I had acted,
Hmm.
probably. But I never crunched those numbers. So I think, aside from, and this is another thing important, I think, detail is that aside from that play, the rest of the writing income has been pretty small. It's, pieces or like I'll get a play in a compilation, or I might license one production of a thing, and I might make a little bit of money here and there on that. It's mostly because the 12 Dates of Christmas is the play that has had the most visibility and therefore the most productions and longevity. It's been, rolling since 2010 and it's still going. Lucky me. There is one thing out there that has continually brought in a little bit of money.
As an actor turned entrepreneur and business person, I find myself thinking a lot about the term leverage. Tell me how you have experienced leverage in being a playwright, in that you now have something like the 12 Dates of Christmas that it exists externally from you and can be, licensed and produced outside of your involvement. How often does that happen? And what's that process like?
Well, The history of that particular play is that I pushed it out into the world with a lot of effort for a couple of years, and that effort paid off. People did pay attention to it. It was the right play at the right time, and it's affordable to produce. I'm under no illusions that this play is like a great work of art, but it's good. It works. And again, timing has a lot to do with that. I put this play out into the world when there really wasn't another option that was solo female for the holidays. Um, and then I would say it so it was around 2012 when it was published. I had already done the work to get it out in the world and get productions on stage. But then that publication certainly helped because now it had visibility that I didn't have to put my effort into. However, I did keep working on it a lot. Bet you if I keep crazy records about this stuff. If I went in, I would guess that I was still sending emails or postcards in 2017 to like garner interest in the 12 Dates of Christmas, a play that already had a 7-year history and was already published. And I don't do that anymore. I really try not to, even though I see all the time. I'll see a theater and I'll be like, oh, my play would do really well there. I just have to I have to start thinking about the next thing. I creatively I need to put my head elsewhere, but also in terms of business, I have to be putting myself elsewhere. An interesting thing happened though is that Concord Theatricals bought out Play Scripts and among many other publishers. So I'm in that we're all many of us playwrights are in this strange transition. And so Concord is now the publishing entity, but I don't really have a relationship with them because the people that I have a relationship have shifted around. Maybe they're there in a different capacity or whatever. Um, so I kind of feel like I feel like I'm starting over a little bit. I think I have to, not necessarily with that play, but I don't really know how it's being handled. It's a little, which I think in some ways is healthy. I just trust that it's out there and it's doing, and the reputation of Concord and the reputation of Play Scripts is enough to carry it along the way. Um, my newer works, though, I'm still actively finding ways to get them into the hands of other people. I
Mhm.
I really have to it's just part of my job. I really consider that my responsibility to know what the theater entities are and know who the people are at those entities that might read a script. And then even I think maybe more on a I don't know if it's practical is the word for it, but I try to just give it to people that show interest. So they might not have a direct avenue to producing my play, but if they show an interest, if anybody says, "Oh, I'd like to read your work," I will follow up with them and email them the work because, it's a numbers, it's visibility, and it's like how many eyes can get on this body of work before um, it it has enough interest to go to production. Is that what is that what you mean by leverage? Like
Well, what
the
I mean
tools?
is, yeah, I assume that you wrote 12 Dates. Is that the most popular play that you've written? Is that the one that's been produced the most? So, you know, are you in your apartment in New York City and all of a sudden a check arrives in the mail because someone decided they wanted to license it and you didn't know? Um, is that how that functions?
Um, yeah, I'm notified when somebody purchases the rights to the play, and I have access to that information. So I know every given year, if a production were to pop up as a surprise to me, then we would have to look into that, which has happened. And you have to go like, oh wait, you have to pay for that because I
Right.
put in so many, non-paid hours for it. But yeah, I mean, I do get a delightful email on a semi-regular basis that names the producing entity and how many performances they plan to do. Sometimes I'll get just like, oh, a book or several hard copy scripts were purchased this most recent year, and it's Now it's old. The play is old, and I've had to rewrite things in there because it's so dated in terms of what we do for technology and communication. I've made updates to this play, and, I was cooking, here I am in my apartment in New York, just as you described, chopping vegetables for dinner, and I got a screenshot texted to me that, Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park had announced my play. So somebody was there at the season announcement and sent it to me, and I didn't know. And this is unusual for a lot of reasons. One, because that's a major regional theater. And I have been unable to penetrate the walls of those Lort A's and Lort B's. They mostly get their plays from agents or they have other means. It's just kind of hard to break into them. Also, I think because I have a small play and they tend to do bigger scale shows. What's also unusual is that I didn't know because, like I told you, I usually get these notifications, but I think it was in this acquisition of Concord Theatricals taking over play scripts that the notifications were just sort of hovering in some cloud somewhere, and I wasn't notified. That was a pretty fun moment in my kitchen to be like, huh, there's the name of my play and my author name right underneath it, and it's on a stage somewhere in Ohio, and how fun. Which has since turned out, I mean, it's just been super cool because I've had a conversation with the director. I'm from Ohio. I keep meeting people that are affiliated with it and, probably get to go. I'll probably go see this one. I don't always do that, but that'll be something to look forward to. So yes, it is doing obviously, it's doing its job promoting itself without my effort right now. But again, that play feels special inside my other works of art that one has it just hit its tipping point. And I remember my husband Sheffield, but I remember Sheffield saying that because he was 100% behind the self-submitting that I was doing. So I should say he was behind our couples submitting. Like, he helped me cull all this information so that we could really identify which theaters were the right place to target. And I remember him saying, "It just has to reach that tipping point. As soon as it reaches that tipping point, you're not gonna have to do this anymore because it's just gonna have a life of its own."
Right.
And I think we can agree that that's happened.
Because in theater, especially, it's a very one-to-one art form, very unleveraged, right? You sell a ticket for a performance, then the performance is gone and you can't sell it again, as opposed
Mm.
to a film which is leveraged, right? And in a play you have to have all the actors there performing every single night. In a movie, you film them one time and then they can do it, all over the place constantly. And so with a play, writing a play, that's a great form of leverage as an artist because you put all the effort in up front and then you're able to utilize it in perpetuity. Like you said, you had to update it a little bit, but how is it different having a play that's published versus a play that you are pitching to theaters that's not published yet?
I don't know yet. I don't know yet. And the reason why is because the 12 Dates of Christmas is just so unusual. But I do have a couple of other plays that were published and didn't take off in that same way. So I don't really feel a big difference. I don't really feel a big difference in how those plays are received by other people, but I do know that there is an understanding from the producing end that the world premiere is good. A regional premiere will suffice. A state premiere is also kind of something they can use. So if I have world premiered my play somewhere, then it loses a little value, I think, down the road. Um, which it just seems like such a silly thing, but I've got to start to pay attention. I'm starting to pay attention to it now, which is like, how do you word this? Is this a workshop production? Just in case Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park calls and they want a world premiere it,
Yeah, yeah,
things like
100%.
that.
That's interesting.
But I also think so to me, and I could be wrong here, but like for example, there's a play that I'm working on right now. It's obviously it's unpublished. It's not, I wouldn't even call it finished yet, but I have a draft and I did a reading of it. So I have a play. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has characters and they say words. But then I have another play that is complete and published. To me, this new unfinished play actually has more value and more sparkle to it because it is still yet unproduced. While my published play has had two productions at very small theaters out west, both of them far from where I live. So, and I didn't see them, and I wasn't a part of that process. So I'm not sure if the producing world would agree with me, but it seems to me as if my newer play is throttled into the world with a big producing entity behind it, and it's a flashy world premiere, and then other people hear about that, that holds more value than what could arguably be a better play, but it just didn't have the same coming out party. It happened, and unless I'm the one, like, blasting that news, and I try to, but unless I'm the one blasting the news, did it happen? Did that tree
Right.
fall in the forest?
Yeah. So you said earlier that 12 Dates wasn't a great work of art, which
Yes, I did say
I think beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but we'll use that as a segue into what does make a play great in your estimation.
it's true. It's putting the right words to truth. And so I experience it as an audience member when I hear it. Somebody says something in a way that is original, and I know that it's true, and I relate to it. That's great to me. Um, and then I think from the artist's point of view, and I've experienced it as a writer and as an actor, but I can say I've experienced it as a director too, that there are the moments where it rings true, that the action I take as an actor or the words that I assemble as a writer create a vibration. There's no denying it. There's just no denying it. And I go like, "Oh, that's not just human to me." It just reaches a pitch that is like transcends me into humanity. And I can't again, like I can't assume that everybody is gonna see my writing or my acting and identify it as that kind of truth. All I know is that I see it in some people and not in others. I see it in some performances, works of art, music. There are pop songs that I'm like, oh, it's poetry. Like they nail it. So it can be any format, but to me, it's when I hear the truth and I hear it in a way that,
Hmm. So it resonates with you and it feels authentic. Am I
yeah,
hearing you correctly?
oh, yeah. I like the way you say it better. Resonate is probably better than vibrate. But yeah, yes.
Let me ask you this, because you mentioned, when the tree falls in the forest, but no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? If a play is produced, or sorry, if a play is not produced, can it be a great work of art? Can a play that is written but not received, it doesn't find its audience? I mean, is finding its audience a part of what a great piece of art is?
I think so. Yes, I do think so. I think that it's not really complete until there is the communion of creator and viewer or listener. Um, you know, it could be on a very small scale though. It could be that I discover poems that a long lost relative wrote. And there we are, the creator and the viewer. I think that counts, right? Even if it wasn't produced on a broad level. Um, but but I and this might take us into new territory, but I think it's part of the responsibility of a creator to bravely push it out into the world even with the understanding that it might not be beloved, you know, it might not be somebody else's truth. And I tell other writers, if I'm particularly when I'm coaching or instructing about solo work, and I've had writing students say along the lines of, why is anybody going to care about this? It means something to me, but I can't believe that anybody else will care. My response is, that's not your business. Your business is to write the truth, write it true to you, and the right people will find it, which is just sort of like flipping around what I just said before. I, as an audience member, identify the truth. Whether or not that person, knew they were going to reach me is irrelevant. It's just that putting the end on the play, like making it to the end of the play, is a huge effort. But there is a really brave step after that, which is to put it in front of somebody else's eyes. So I'm not sure if my example of like found art is the
Mhm.
same, because I do think that there's a really brave step when an artist says, okay, this is done. It's brave. And it's true for actors too, to be like, okay, I'm ready. Doesn't mean that it can't change and evolve over that, but to just go like, I am satisfied. I've done the work. I'm ready.
Hmm. When you encounter a really effective story, what do you think is happening structurally under the surface? What is there a formula that you notice? Is it connected to sort of the classic exposition, inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, or is that old news?
I like the way you frame that. It's old, but it still works. It works. I think when I encounter a working piece of theater, there is an element of surprise. I want to feel, I want to feel, I don't want to feel misled. But if you have misled me and I am genuinely surprised, I will congratulate that. It's like, oh, I did not see that coming. Those moments are exciting to me in the theater. And so, in some ways, that does trace back to, well, it's not the same thing as building to the climax, which I think of as the most sort of traditional thing. It's, what's the term for it? The Greeks had a term, it's the reversal. So, where Oedipus is prideful and then at the end is humble, whatever that reversal is, that's part of the surprise. And a good artist, a good craftsman, woman, person, puts it together in a way that it's a genuine surprise. They blend it in with this human dialogue and characters that we relate to. So I'm not even paying attention to like, where's the reversal going to be? I'm paying attention to the interactions, paying attention to the ongoing conflict. How are we going to solve this problem? And that, I think, is universal and timeless. It's like, without the conflict, I'm not sure that it's drama. Right now, I'm mixing words here because I can experience theater that doesn't use that structure. It doesn't require a protagonist and an antagonist and a rising action. It's just it's a theatrical work. Maybe there's spectacle, maybe there's movement, maybe there's a theme, but it doesn't have to be plot driven to be a work of theater. But I think if we're talking about dramatic arts, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a story with a journey, and they move up and then they drop. That's just what I have acknowledged. Like, that tends to be the thing that works. That tends to be the thing that gets the Pulitzer. That tends to be the thing that gets the Tony. The ones that They do follow that structure, but you don't recognize it. It doesn't feel like a formula watching it because it's so well crafted in something original. Or let's reuse the word you said earlier, it was authentic. It's somebody's authentic voice and making characters that also feel authentic. So I think
And because you teach playwriting, that's right, right?
I have taught, yeah. I mean, I think the class was called performance writing, and I do find myself in that position quite a bit. It's funny because I didn't learn playwriting in a class. I'm mostly self-taught, but no, that's not true. I learned in rehearsal. I learned about plays by doing plays, and so we were talking about that format. No, what was the word you used? Structure, right? Like the traditional structure of a play or the blueprint. The same is true down to a line of dialogue, I think, which is that we lead to something. And that's true when we're delivering a joke, and that's true when you're delivering a line of Shakespeare. It's true in most plays, and that's why acting coaches are always saying you need to go up at the ending. And it sounds like you're getting this weird technical note about how to use your voice, but the idea is we're building to something, and each scene is building to something, and the play itself is building to something. So, learning that rhythm as an actor is probably what gave me the best sense of how to write a play. And let's beat the dead reindeer, which is what I like to say about the 12 dates of Christmas. But if I refer to that play again, it ha- it has this. Well, it has a pattern. It has a lot of patterns to it, and it has a lot of poetic language to it. And it's like basically like a story, a story, a story, a story, a punchline. And then I start the next
Mm.
story, and the next story, and the next story, and then a punchline. So it really follows a pattern and a rhythm. I was on tour. I was touring Shakespeare at the time. So the learning what and how to put the funniest word at the end of the sentence and use alliteration in those creative ways, it that was all because I was living in the rhetorical devices that Shakespeare wrote. And so it was just lovely to be able to apply it to some contemporary ideas and funny stories, but the same tools. Anyway, yes. So yes, I do teach performance writing.
And so when you are either working with a student or working on your own work, when you're starting with the blank page, or even, you're in the ideation phase of thinking about a new story that you might want to write, where do you start? Do you start at the beginning? Do you start with the character? Do you start at the climax? Or is it different every time?
I think it's different every time. And writers are different the way that they approach it. A phrase that I find myself using with writers a lot is let's go with the hottest idea. What's the hottest idea? Because if it isn't something that turns you on, you're not going to want to sit down and do it. And writing is going to, requires consistency. It requires diligence. You've got to do your push ups if you want to gain the strength, or you've got to run your training miles if you want to run the marathon. So you got to sit down every day, even if that material doesn't make it into your final work. We got to get those words on the page. So if I'm working, so if you came to me and you said, I have an idea for a play, I would want to know first if it was a story, right? You're like, well, it's this guy who starts here and then this happens and then blah. You've got a story. And then this happens and then this is the result of that. Sometimes what happens is somebody will say, well, I've been thinking a lot about leverage, or I've been thinking about authenticity. I have, a- I think it could make a good play, but they don't have a story yet. Well, it's a harder jumping off point, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. I'm going to give you an example. Personally, I've thought for a long time, like I got to make a play about um, health insurance. But just like as I say it, I'm like, nobody wants to see that play. But it has caused so much drama in my life. And I know that it is not a purely me problem, that there are lots of Americans who have to deal with this. And we're talking in some cases life and death, right? And, well, that's a play, but I don't have a story. I don't know what the story is. I'm just like, well, I think I would have to start researching, call people and go, what was your experience when you lost your insurance? Or, can you want to talk to me a little bit about that time when you had to go to the hospital? And gather and see if I could come up with a story. So there you go. There's some like that start as a theme, and there's some that start as a story. It always helps to know where you're going, always. And I say this from my own point of view, which is I often will just start a play and I'm like, I'm gonna write a play about this thing that happened to me. And I get stuck in the mud. You get like 3/4 of the way through, and it's really hard to get over the hump if you don't know where you're going. Airy Bonfire is a great example where that you and I worked on together. That I was like, I'm going to write a play about these journals that are collecting, and I want to get rid of them. I want to burn them. And I knew that that was the play. But as I got going, the information surrounding it became more important than what actually happened to the books. And left me in like a really swampy place. And you probably remember, I was like, I don't know, is this the ending if this is the way it goes? And so it's gone through a couple rounds of restructuring. I'm going to see the play again with a new title, performed by somebody else later this month. And I imagine that's going to give me more information too. Um, the play that I was referencing before, that is unfinished, multi character play, spent the time, having learned this from Diary Bonfire, I spent last summer writing an outline for it. Just
Hmm.
basically scene by scene. I didn't follow anybody else's model, but like the same kind of outline that we were using in 8th grade and 9th grade. Like, write your outline first. And, and it was a little bit tedious, but boy, when it came time to write in the dialogue, it was so fun because I
Hmm.
knew where I was going. I could just like play. And there were also times when I was writing that dialogue, or when I was writing an outline, the dialogue would start. I would be like, and then they're going to say something like this. And all of a sudden, I'm writing a scene I'm just writing a play and writing the dialogue. And I just let it happen. I was like, don't censor that. Maybe you'll use it. And then I did almost every time. But I wouldn't go too far, then I would get back to the outline and just continue so I know where I'm going. Um, so I wanna say that that is really would be my advice, but I don't even follow my own advice. So I also feel like the thing to do is to honor what the playwright is seeing. What is the vision? And what is hot about it? What is the thing about it that makes you unable to put the idea down? And then we lean into that. We gotta push forward with that hot idea. And typically we're gonna go one way or the other. The story will come out, or we'll go like, okay, well, this is the theme. So now we have to craft the story to fill that.
Hmm.
I don't know. It can be messy, but definitely not an expert at it.
I'm latching on to this idea, though, of you've just got to put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, right?
Yes.
Tell me about what your cadence is with writing. Is this a daily practice? Was it daily? Is it how do you approach the nuts and bolts of just getting something out onto the page?
Yeah, I started as a daily writer. I read The Artist's Way and I did those morning pages. The Artist's Way is the book written by Julia Cameron, and it's pretty famous for opening up creativity in artists or people who don't even consider them an artist when they start the book. And it's 30 minutes of stream of consciousness writing to put a person in the practice of writing. And the exercise doesn't expect a result. You just go into it, and when the 30 minutes are done, you close it, and then maybe you move on to a more formal writing project. And I did that for over 20 years, and I really, really worked for me. And then I had a baby, and I was like, I need to, I gotta do something else with my time. Like I couldn't. I decided I did not want to spend 30 minutes free writing. I will still go back to that exercise from time to time, but I'm also not a person who resists sitting down to write. I look forward to it, and I don't really need a whole lot of special circumstances. I prefer to write in the morning, um, but I can I have learned, I will tell you this, for me, it's handwriting. Keyboard, is less I feel less connected to it. I can scribble. I'm not a fast type. I never learned to type. So I just do my own weird typing, and it doesn't flow as well. So I handwrite most of what I do, and then I go back in and type it up. And that tends to be the first round of editing as I'm moving it from handwriting into the page. The other thing that I've learned, which is a little bit related, but actors need to do this too. And it's such an awkward phase for me as an actor to take my script and go into a room alone and pretend. It's just, it's hard for me to like get over that hump. But I remember being in acting school, both in grad school and in undergrad, and seeing other students do this. They would just go work alone. And I was like, oh, like that seems so tedious to me. Like, what are you even doing? How do you know if
Hmm.
you're doing, how are you getting it right? But then I was in undergrad when I wrote my first solo show, and that's the only way to do it. It's the only way to do. You might choose to have a director, but I really feel like every actor benefits from having a little bit of alone time and then working with the director. And then I started applying this to multi-character shows that I was in because I would find that I was in rehearsal and I just tend to be what's the word? Almost it's like too polite. I'm a little bit too polite. Like I really want to keep the thing going. I know that we don't have a lot of rehearsal hours. We never have enough rehearsal hours. That's just the state of theater in 2026, or really, I said 2007. It was in 2008 when I remember rehearsals going, and they
Hmm.
never came back. And I learned the value of doing the scene work, doing it with everybody, and then at the end of the day, or like finding the off day, taking my script and allowing for discoveries in the
So
same way that I do as a writer. Go ahead, yeah.
this transitions nicely because that time, I'm assuming, is uncompensated.
Correct. Correct. That is right.
So so now as an artist, this is your work and there's no ROI. It's just
No
eh,
immediate ROI.
no immediate ROI. Um, well, how can it? I guess with a play, it can produce a product that then can bring income down the road. Um, but if you're rehearsing for a show and because the rehearsal is truncated, you're putting in effort beforehand. How could that possibly ROI for you down the road?
This might seem way too hopeful, wishful thinking, but I do believe that I need solo time to give the best performance that I'm going to give. And I don't mean that everybody does, but I've learned that's part of my process. I need a little bit of time on my own. Sometimes I need a lot of time. And think, I do think, I do believe, as wishful as it sounds, that those are the times that I stand out in a rehearsal process and ultimately in production. And I have at times, and I don't think I've achieved this at every rehearsal process that I'm in, but I know that I have achieved a reputation. Ginna will get it done. She will, she will get it done. She'll do the work and often ahead of schedule. I will get it done ahead of schedule. What I know, I feel like I'm bragging, but what is my point here? That those are the people that are going to hire me back. That's what it is. That's where the return is, and it's not fair. It's not fair. But I don't. I'm not grumbling about it. I actually feel really good about that solo time. Listen, I do this. I was teaching a cardio fitness class this morning, and I stood in my living room last night for 15 minutes and I marked through what I was going to do on my own. Nobody was paying me for that. When I teach a lesson with a PowerPoint, I go through it ahead of time and I do it. It's just part of the package. And my sister, who was an educator for a long time, she said, she always teaches that there is a direct result, that her best classes that she teaches are the ones for which she did the most preparation. And that's, I just relate to that. I'm like, yeah, it's true. It's true for almost anything. And I just have to believe that it's a package deal. It's not a one for one. It's not like I'm going to get paid for those minutes. I just am going to hope that my work ethic pays off down the line.
Yeah, I it makes me want to find more ways to encourage artists and actors to look for ways where they can invest their time in the way you're talking about, but doing it intentionally where they get to participate in the upside. So
Yeah.
audiobooks would be the perfect example of this, right? Like, why should a narrator of an audiobook be paid a small amount one time
Mhm.
to narrate an entire book, and then if that book, that audiobook sells 100,000 copies, they still remain with the one, the $1,000 they got paid for the
Is that true?
8
There's
hours of
no
work.
residuals?
I don't think that there is none, but I think there are a lot of deals out there that,
Yeah.
and I would need to look in. I'm not super sure about how that the residuals work, but from what I understand, there are a lot of people who you get paid one time, and then that IP no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the author of the book. And obviously this happens in a smaller scale, even with theater, in the sense that if you're in a commercial production, you get your weekly salary, and now there's security in that, but if it does kind of take off and they sell more tickets than they anticipated, nothing happens for the artist. Um, and so that is where, as a playwright, I think it's incredible that you can create value once, and then that thing lives on and can touch future generations and create income for you when you're uh, in New York and the play's happening in Wyoming. I think that's really important, and that leads me to ask you, tell me about what your strategy has been. You've been an artist for such a long time, so how have you reconciled? As we both know, it's very difficult to manage the finances of being an artist and the realities of life and healthcare. So, what has your approach been? How have you been so successful in managing that all these years?
Do you remember do you remember that you and I, our partners, had beers together one time and a question like this came up? Do you remember this?
I do
And
remember this.
my response was like, "Well, I turn tricks and Sheffield gambles." I don't know. It's something like really horrible like that. Um, I'm going to give you some very practical, true responses because that's not true. Um, and also, it reminds me that there is a woman whose name I can't remember. She's been doing a sort of running article in the New York Times, talking to New Yorkers about how they afford living in New York, whether they're artists or whatever. Just like, how do you live in the city that is making it almost impossible for somebody if you're not, very wealthy? So, the number one thing is that we are fortunate to have reasonable rent. We've been in this building. My husband's been in this building for a long time, so that is probably the number. If that went away, that would really screw things up. Um, I have maintained the certification as a fitness instructor and sometimes personal trainer. I don't really do much of that anymore, but that allows me to I have this flexible job with an hourly rate that is like better than other jobs. It's not like I get a lot of money, but that has been my part-time job for a long time. And so then I can, when you do it longer, then you can ask for a little bit more. We shop at Costco. Like we do those things where it's like, oh, that's an item we're getting from Costco. And then I have a box of produce that I order every week from Misfit Markets. Like I know that I'm going to get that discount produce. And then I go out of my way to shop at the Trader Joe's, which is a couple subway stops away. So we're getting our groceries because I just refuse to overspend. I refuse to overspend on groceries. So I've got that all that's like tight in my mind. I know how to make all that work and we can eat. And I'm also like, I really love to have balanced meals. And it's like really important to me that my family has fresh produce. So I feel like we're eating good meals and I'm not breaking the bank over it. It is, here's where it is, where I hold them is I don't buy myself new clothes. I do not go like that is it's very rare that I would buy a new item of clothing for myself. I buy reused I reuse and recycle, so I buy secondhand clothes a lot of the time, or just I wait for something to go on sale. I never pay full price for clothes. I will for my daughter. I'll buy her new things, but I don't. I just don't ever. That's just a one thing that I have decided in my life. Like, you don't get that at this time. And I very rarely, I like almost never buy a bottle of water, and I try not to buy coffee because those are two things that you can have at home and like the overprice on. I just know these things from over time. That's like, oh, you can't afford that. That is not your life. So those are some of like the really practical things that I know that I do. And then, we get these fun times where I'll get I look, the royalty check will come in, it's bigger than I thought. And I do, and I save money. I don't spend my royalty checks when they come in. I usually save it, but then like a portion
Mhm.
of it, I'll be like, oh, we can throw a party. Like, let's have some friends over. Let's throw a party. Or last spring, I wanted to take my husband and my daughter out to a fancy restaurant. And they were like, "Hi." And I was like, Let's go at lunch. It's not going to be super expensive, but it's this place I've always wanted to go to. Let's go. It'll be fun. It'll be fancy." I said, when we sat down, it's lunch. And I was like, Chef, you want to get a glass of wine? I'm going to get a glass of wine. And he was like, we don't have to you don't have to do that. And I was like, no, we can afford it. But we're so used to being like, nah, we'll have that at home. We're not going to spend the $16 for the
Mhm.
glass of
Yeah.
Chardonnay. So it's just been a balance.
Yeah, and it sounds like what you're saying is there is intentional sacrifice
Yeah.
being made in order to make it sustainable. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I know there are these things that I'm not going to spend the money there. And I don't know if I think I was just born this, like, I'm just kinda cheap. I just think I was born that way. Like, I don't have to spend
Well,
money. It doesn't I don't get a big
maybe
thrill.
I'm not saying you weren't born that way. I wouldn't be able to say that of you, but I do think I have having spent time with a lot of artists in my life, that's a learned skill, thriftiness.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
for the longest time, Lauren and I wouldn't buy furniture. I would go and get cinder blocks and 2x4s and build a bed frame because that was, $30 instead of 150. And I think you do learn those things because your job is so inconsistent and the ceiling is just not it's so low. I mean, you can only make so much being a theater artist. I mean, do you know anybody who's making a like a lot of money in this field? I think they're out there.
Don't. I know that, the individuals that I know who have been able to perform on Broadway have been able to relax during that period of time. They don't usually change their address because they don't know how long it's gonna last. So they're like, "Well, I'm gonna keep this rent." they can relax a little bit. They can order out food. They can, I think that there are indulgences they can allow themselves to have. And I remember, and this was one time that I can remember over my career, a friend of mine was doing regional theater circuit, going from job to job, that she bought a car. And I was like, damn. I remember thinking like that's a good year. Or like our mutual friend Renee, who's on tour right now. Like if you book something that consistently and you're smart about it, you're not spending all that money when you go to each city, but you're saving some of it. There are ways I think that you relax. I just don't, like you said, making a lot of money on the stage. I don't think so. I think you would get moments where you can relax a little bit, and then there are the times when you have to go back to your thrifty, whatever trips to Costco.
And so that leads me to why theater in 2026? Why are you not writing for film? Why are you not writing for television? Or are you?
Well, I'm gonna to because I there are things in my life that I would like. I'm looking at my little apartment right now, which I love. Um, but I think a lot about a house. I think a lot about it. So I would like to, yeah, I wanna write a movie. However, why theater and why even if I do write a movie, I don't think I'm gonna get that far away from it is um determination to keep live art alive. That I feel like the more we become attached to our digital resources, the more we need to elevate these things that are live or just not on a computer. It doesn't have to be live theater. I'm thinking like, how do I encourage people to have game night? I don't really like game night, so I'm not the best person for that. But I understand that it's like that's what the young kids are doing. Like they are finding ways to commune in person. I like the theater. I'm a little bit worried that it's too expensive to really do what I hope it will do. Just that. Let's lean into our in-person events. But because we've backed ourselves into a corner, it's the expectation of what live theater is and the paying of actors is costly. And so it might be hard, but I have this dream that we're going to somehow get back to this storytelling around the campfire. Something a little less produced and a lot more about community. So it's just getting people into the same space and sharing their stories. But I that's why I choose theater. But like I said, I'm like trying to think of, I've read stories about communities where somebody gets this big long community table, or they move their tables out and have a block party, or you join a jogging club, or it's a musical. It could be anything. It could be like, what are the ways that we can get together? What are the ways that we can commune as humans?
Hmm.
Um, and theater has always been, as you know, since the beginning of the time, group storytelling or getting together in a group and hearing a story has always been one of the ways to do it. So count me in.
So, do you think that the financial instability that we talked about earlier, do you think that that creates an environment where artists can thrive, or does it mostly just exhaust them and keep us from making that?
I think both. I definitely think both. My personal experience has been like run, 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 crash. Things go really well, and then I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And then I get an idea that I can't ignore, and I push and push and push and push, and then I crash. So that's just my personal experience. I don't know. I know a lot of people who they just kind of shake their heads and they go, I'm in it for life. So there's something I think also to be said for identity. Where theater artist falls in a person's sense of themselves and how hard it is to change that. Like, we started this conversation by me, like, I don't even want to admit that acting isn't the number one thing because if I built that as my identity, it's, then the whole world shakes when I make a different choice. And I, even to that point about when I think about my thrifty self and my small apartment self, that I am fearful of losing that identity. And I do work on this. I meet with a counselor on a biweekly basis, no, every other week. And this is what we work on, which is like, can I even imagine myself owning a house? Can I be a person who writes screenplays? And it's really hard for me to imagine who that Ginna is, but I see the Ginna who is gonna, like, wake up at 5:30 in the morning and then teach 2 fitness classes and still find time to write and talk to Benj. Yeah, I know who that is. Like, that part of my identity, and I referenced it earlier when I was like, "Oh, I feel like I'm bragging that I work so hard." I've told myself that that's who I am. And it's totally possible that I could give a good performance without having put in extra work on my own. But I have told myself that that's who I am. And I'm like, well, I, I do, that's what I do. So
So, do you think that is innate or is that chosen? I mean,
chosen.
it's chosen. It's not inherently who you are and you can't change that.
No, I
You
can change
actively
that.
choose it. Okay.
I, I believe that I choose it. I believe that I choose it. Yeah. And I believe most of why I'm choosing it right now is because I am so fearful. What else do you want to know about me? I'll tell you all my fears. I think I'm really fearful. Um, I don't know, it's hard to admit. How do I say this? Maybe it's fearful of success? I don't know. Is it that? Is it maybe it's like another thing is like I'm afraid that I will appear unattractive if I want money, if I want wealth, that makes me somehow like despicable and that there's something noble about my roughing it. Like anybody in the world is effing paying attention. Like nobody is paying attention. I mean, you are because you're asking me these questions, but I don't think anybody else cares. But I think that there is this part of my identity that is like, work hard, achieve things, go to heaven. And that the alternative is like somehow bad or that won't earn me respect. It won't earn me respect. And I really, really, it's important to me. It's important to me to feel respected, whether I am or not. It's something that I strive for.
Right. And I feel as if we often don't realize the mental constructs that we have built
Yeah.
around, I mean, especially around money and our relationship to it and this dialogue of the starving artist and being
Yes.
painted as um, this beautiful thing. And I guess I wonder, and I'll pose it to you, is that a myth that we've been perpetuating as
Yeah.
it's so much glory to be a starving artist and to suffer for your work.
Yeah. I don't think there's glory in it, but I do think it's a myth that we've perpetuated because um, there there is this shift in the world of theater that I'm sure that you have observed, and we have friends who have been really vocal about it, but that we need to see some change. And simply put, and this goes down all different avenues in terms of equity, but the simplest is that we need to take care of ourselves and of each other in the world of theater. That's what I'm talking about in the world of theater. And some of the ways that we have not been taking care of each other is like what you referenced before, like the non paid work. It creeps up, the memorization that happens outside of rehearsal, right? And so finding ways to compensate for that. Here's another one, just like having an understudy, just having an understudy so that the performer doesn't try to perform with strep throat, you know? Please don't go home rather than this notion of like, no, I can do it. I can do it. I can perform it. And I am so guilty of this. You've done it. You've heard it. Unfortunately, you heard me. Do you remember that performance when I lost my voice? But it was opening night, and I was like, I won't miss opening night.
Yeah, you didn't. No, back in the day, you didn't miss shows. Didn't matter what was going on.
Just you're not going to miss a show, and uh, that's a matter of taking care of the self as much as it is. The institution can provide the understudy, but we as the actor have to be the one to go. Yeah, I can't do that. I need to go to bed, or all sorts of things, right? There are all these ways that we need to be taking care of each other. And another great example is the way that intimacy coordinators have now stepped into the workplace, and that is taken very seriously. These are necessary changes, and that's what I guess that's what I mean about the myth is that I think it's not just a myth. Like one of those, I think it's Stella Adler. I was just reading, whose book says actors don't get sick. I'm like, okay. But here in 2026, we have this thing called COVID. And guess what? If actors don't get sick, but they feel sick and perform, they get everybody else infected and maybe the audience too. There are all these other horrible things that we have done to each other in an effort to let the show go on and feel like, oh, if I don't do absolutely everything possible, there won't be a future for me. Somebody else is going to take the job. Well, the competition still exists. There's still like 10 women behind me ready to take the job if I don't want it. I know that. But I don't think that to perpetuate it, I just don't know what the answer is. I don't know. I don't know because I'm really struggling with the actors union. I'm really struggling with it because I want I want some regulations around the work that I do, and I want to be treated with respect and like a human being. But I know that the cost of an equity actor is really difficult. So there's all this work happening. I can't do it because I'm considered too expensive. It's just that we're in a tough spot right now, and I think it needs to maybe break all the way, and then we'll rebuild. I'm not saying that I want it to break. Maybe there's a better solution, but probably the first step is just acknowledging what you said, like, where are we perpetuating myths? And I'm talking about it now on a grand scale, but if I just bring it back to me for a minute, like, that's why I go talk to a counselor, is to go, what would it look like if I wrote a screenplay and sold it? What would it look like if I demanded to be in it? I'm like, "Oh, no, you're not casting a star. I'm gonna play that part." And I just stand my ground. What does that even look like? Maybe it's not e maybe I don't even have to be fierce. I just have to be like, "Oh, and I'll play that role." And everybody goes, "Well, of course you will." Right? I don't see that ease happening, but why not?
I
And I'm
love
not
that.
sure what the mental push-ups are that I have to do to get there, but I do
That's
believe it's my choice.
part of me advocating for artists to stand up for themselves and look
Yeah.
for ways that they can participate in the upside. I mean, you wrote the thing, so who's to say why shouldn't you say I'm also going to be starring in it or playing this character in it? And that's a part of the deal. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. I'll keep my play. Or keep my script. I'll keep my what is it? My
Screenplay. Yeah,
movie
well, yes,
screenplay.
you're right. You're right. And advocating for ourselves requires that element of healthy confidence. And, you probably recall having conversations with me in the past, and I'm like, I don't my self-esteem is not high enough to do this right now. And you're like, "What?" I remember you saying to me like, "Well, I think you're great." And going like, "Thank you." And still it's gotta come here first. Like, I know that I have to have certain beliefs about myself before I can make these things happen. And, I'd like to say that that's easy, but it's not. It's not easy for me. It's not easy for me. I feel proud of accomplishments, but where is the idea, like a human just has worth. That's it. You don't have to have accomplished something. You get to just have worth. you have you get to have talents. Nobody, you don't have to prove that. You get to just have them. Um, which is the kind of thing that I like to teach downstream. I like to teach that to my daughter, to my students. I want to like perpetuate that idea, which is like we already are valuable. So then you should be able to come to the table, the negotiating table with ease because you've already got that worth. But, believing
Is
it up
this
here.
Are you concerned for the independent artist in the next era? In that, I mean, specifically with that in mind, that is the independent artist being marginalized?
Huh. No, I think the independent artist will rise up. It's going to be it'll be the phoenix. The independent artist isn't going to go anywhere. It'll just look different. I I don't believe that it's going to go away or be marginalized. I don't think so. I just worry. This is the worry, is that the independent artist will be so isolated in one's own world without doing the communal part that like live theater requires. Like if we don't keep that communal part alive, then I think then we have a problem. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think there there's a fear of mine that the independent artist is becoming less relevant uh, because the audiences are dwindling. It's becoming very expensive. I worry that we're working an old system uh, that was built for a different generation, and we're trying to make it work in this era. And so I fear that things, if we keep on that path, that we will not break through, but that we will continue to smolder and the flame. Hopefully, I want to believe what you said, which is that we will be the phoenix who will reinvent ourselves. Because do you think it's necessary that theater has some sort of reinvention?
I think it inevitably will. It always has. There was the invention of lights. There was, like there was theater before lighting design, before sound design, and now we have that. And now we have people receiving Tonys for that artistry. So yeah, it's going to continue to evolve. It can't not. Um, and you know, I get, I try to get out and see a lot of theater, and there's some innovative stuff that is working. It's working, and it's going to continue to work. And I don't want us to ignore that. We have to evolve, and I think we have to evolve. But as long as we are maintaining the communal aspect, we will inevitably change. We can't stop that. The stories are just they have to keep up. We can still do We're living in this day and age where we can see plays that were performed 50 years ago or hundreds of years ago, and we can decide that they're still relevant. But we also have, the play that was written yesterday. We just have access to that huge line of history. What are tomorrow's stories? In and of itself, those new stories are evolution. I don't know what they're going to be, but they are going to push us forward. I have to believe.
Ginna, what a great way to wrap up a podcast with that thought. And of
Just a
course,
little bit
because
of hope.
you are such a light and an interesting person to speak with, and I hope that you'll consider coming back on the podcast at some point so we can have more talks like this.
I would love
Well,
to. It was fun.
before we wrap things up here, will you drop a little bit of marketing so people can find you? Where do you exist on the internet?
Is the Yeah, where do I? Okay, number 1 is my website, which is www.ginnahoben.com, and Ginna is spelled with 2 N's. And then my Instagram handle is Ginna Beans. And those are probably, like, the 2 fastest ways to find me. But the other exciting information is that Silk Moth Theater in Virginia will be producing my play Above Ground at the end of this month, and then Parent Station in Lynchburg will be producing my play No Spring Chicken in June. And as everybody already heard, the 12 Dates of Christmas, the old reindeer that it is going to get a production at Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park in December. So that's marketing fairy dust for the listeners.
That's a good 2026 lineup right there. That sounds great, Jenna. Well, thank you so much for being here. And thanks everybody for tuning in to Ghostlight this week.
Thank you, Benjamin.
All right. See you soon.